fine. So yesterday we discussed uh, the numeral control of circulation. We will continue from that. We discussed the local control and now we will continue with the humeral part. So today we will discuss how tissue blood flow is regulated by different hormones, and the regulation of hormones is known as the humoral control. Then we will discuss the neural mechanisms that control the circulation. Later on, we will discuss the role of vasomotor center. What is vasomotor center? What are the components of vasomotor center? And how does this vasomotor center regulate the cardiac activity? At the end of today's session, we will discuss a small topic known as vasovagal syncope. So these are the learning outcomes for today's session. So yesterday we discussed the local control mechanisms. We discussed the short term or the acute mechanisms and the long term mechanisms. And we discussed different theories in local control. We discussed metabolic theory, we discussed the myogenic theory. But today we will focus on the control by the different hormones, how different hormones regulate the circulation. So we will not go into the details of local control. We have already discussed that yesterday. So we will continue from the humoral control today. So as we have discussed, humoral control means the control or the regulation of the cardiovascular system by different hormones. And we can categorize these agents as vasoconstricting agents and vasodilating agents. By vasoconstriction, we mean increased resistance at the blood vessels. Whenever there is increased resistance, the blood flow will be compromised. And these are the important vasoconstrictors. The most important is the epinephrine and norepinephrine. Then we have another vasoconstricting agent known as angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 is another important vasoconstrictor. Then we have another hormone which is released from the pituitary gland, the posterior portion of the pituitary gland, that is vasopressin. And the other name for vasopressin is antidiuretic hormone. And we have discussed the role of endothelin already yesterday, another vasoconstricting agent. So all these agents, they tend to increase the resistance at the blood vessels. So whenever the resistance is increased, the blood flow will be compromised. Then we have vasodilators. Among the vasodilators, we have two very important vasodilating agents, bradykinin and histamine. So by the term vasodilator, we are referring to those agents which tend to reduce the resistance at the vessels. So decreased resistance will tend to enhance the blood flow through the lumen of the blood vessel. So humoral control basically comprises of either vasoconstricting agents or vasodilating agents. The third category is the vascular control by other ions or chemical factors. We will discuss the role of these ions later, inshallah. Now this is a list of few of the important vasoconstrictors and vasodilators. So you can see the role of autonomic nervous system is very important. And when we use the term autonomic nervous system, we are referring to the two subdivisions, the sympathetic division of the ANS and the parasympathetic division of the ANS. Now, these two subdivisions of autonomic nervous system are almost opposite to each other. For example, the role of sympathetic stimulation is excitatory over heart. Similarly, parasympathetic stimulation will give inhibitory effects. And it all depends on the type of receptor. For example, if we discuss the effect of sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic nerves on the blood vessels, on the vascular system, almost all the sympathetic nerves are vasoconstrictors. So they tend to increase the resistance of the blood vessels. So vasoconstricting effect is the predominant effect of the sympathetic nerves. And this effect is exhibited by alpha adrenergic receptors. So most of the blood vessels, when they are stimulated by the sympathetic nerves, they undergo vasoconstriction because they have alpha adrenergic type of receptors. Similarly, parasympathetic nerve stimulation will give the opposite effect. If you stimulate the blood vessels with parasympathetic nerves, this will decrease the resistance of the blood vessels. So when the resistance is decreased, there will be increase in the caliber or the diameter of the blood vessels, and we call it as vasodilation or vasodilatation. So opposite effect of sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves on the blood vessels. The predominant effect of parasympathetic stimulation on the blood vessels is vasodilatation. The predominant effect of sympathetic stimulation on the blood vessels is vasoconstriction. One thing is important to note that although vasoconstriction is the predominant effect of sympathetic stimulation, but there are some sites where there is vasodilatation instead of vasoconstriction when you stimulate the vessel with sympathetic. And this is due to the different type of receptor. And this type of receptor is known as the beta adrenergic receptor. So here you can see at some sites, especially in the arterioles of the skeletal muscle, instead of the alpha type receptor, we have beta adrenergic receptor. So although we are stimulating the blood vessel with sympathetic nerve, but the type of receptor is different. That is why instead of vasoconstriction, there will be vasodilatation. But this vasodilatory effect of sympathetic stimulation on the blood vessels is overshadowed by the predominant vasoconstriction effect. So usually constriction of the blood vessels when we stimulate the vessels with sympathetic nerves, and usually there is vasodilatation when we stimulate the vessels with parasympathetic nerve. There are some exceptions, for example, skeletal muscles we have discussed, and there is vasodilatation instead of vasoconstriction due to the different type of receptor. So in one line, we will conclude that sympathetic nerve usually causes vasoconstriction and parasympathetic nerves usually cause vasodilatation. So these are the subdivisions of the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Then we have another hormone, another chemical agent known as angiotensin 2. Now this angiotensin 2 is released from the kidneys, and this is a very powerful vasoconstricting agent. And you cannot undermine the role of angiotensin 2 in the maintenance of arterial pressure. We will discuss the details, the mechanisms by which angiotensin maintain the arterial pressure in the coming lectures. But for the time being, you must know that this angiotensin 2 is released from the kidneys First, renin is secreted by the kidneys, and then this renin is responsible for conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, and this angiotensin 2 will cause vasoconstriction and hence will regulate the arterial pressure. Especially when the arterial pressure is compromised, there will be increased release of renin from the kidneys and increased production of angiotensin 2 will be there to compensate the decrease in arterial pressure. So angiotensin 2 is yet another vasoconstricting agent. Then we have a hormone which is released from the pituitary gland, to be precise, from the posterior part of the pituitary gland, that is vasopressin. The other name is antidiuretic hormone. As the name indicates, vasopressin means it increases the pressure at the blood vessels. It increases the resistance at the blood vessels. So whenever the resistance is increased, the blood flow will be compromised. So another vasoconstricting agent is antidiuretic hormone. The other name is vasopressin. We call it as antidiuretic hormone because it inhibits diuresis. And we will discuss the phenomenon of diuresis in renal physiology. So diuresis means excessive excretion of fluid through the urine, and it inhibits the excessive excretion of fluid through urine. Then we have two very important vasodilating agents, the histamine and bradykinin. These two agents are very important. They act locally and cause decrease in the resistance at the blood vessels. So when the resistance is decreased, there will be increase in the diameter, increase in the caliber of the blood vessels. This is known as vasodilatation. So histamine is a local vasodilator, and there is role of histamine during inflammation and allergic responses. Similarly, whenever there is trauma, histamine will be released. Similarly, during allergic reactions, there is role of histamine, and this histamine is released by the mast cells and basophils. So histamine, bradykinin, both are important vasodilators. The last chemical agent is the prostaglandin. Now, prostaglandins can either act as vasodilators or sometimes they act as vasoconstrictors. It depends on the type of prostaglandin. For example, prostaglandin I2. This is an important vasodilating agent. On the other hand, the other type of prostaglandin is thromboxane A2, and this thromboxane A2 acts as a vasoconstrictor. So to conclude, prostaglandins, they have dual role. They can either act as vasodilator or sometimes act as vasoconstrictors. So this is the list of the important hormones that may regulate the blood flow to the tissues. There is role of the two subdivisions of autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Sympathetic stimulation causes vasoconstriction. Usually, parasympathetic division causes vasodilatation. Then we have angiotensin 2 released from the kidneys and vasopressin released from the posterior pituitary. Both act as vasoconstrictors. Similarly, we have vasodilators like histamine and bradykinins, and then prostaglandins, which can either act as vasodilators or as vasoconstrictors. So besides these important hormones, there are some other ions which may cause vasoconstriction or vasodilatation. As far as the ion responsible for vasoconstriction, the most important of them is the calcium ion. So remember, calcium is for contraction. Calcium is for contraction. Contraction of what? Contraction of smooth muscles lining the wall of the blood vessel. So when these calcium ions, they enter from the extracellular fluid into the blood vessels, they will stimulate the smooth muscles lining of the blood vessel wall and cause contraction of these smooth muscles. Contraction of these smooth muscles will lead to vasoconstriction. So these are the most important ions which cause vasoconstriction. Then we have other ions which cause vasodilatation. We have discussed few of the ions already. For example, potassium ions, they act as vasodilators. Magnesium ions, they also act as vasodilators. And hydrogen ions, another vasodilating agent. So whenever the concentration of hydrogen ions increases, this will increase the caliber of the blood vessels, especially the arterioles. So increase in the hydrogen ion concentration will increase the diameter of the blood vessels, and this is known as vasodilatation. Or we can also say that decrease in the pH will lead to dilatation of the blood vessels. As we all know, pH is the reciprocal of the hydrogen ion concentration. So when the hydrogen ion concentration increases, this means the pH is dropping, and vice versa. Similarly, if there is a decrease in the hydrogen ion concentration, this decrease in hydrogen ion concentration will cause increase in pH, and increase in pH will cause vasoconstriction. So along with potassium ions and magnesium ions, hydrogen ions are very important for vasodilation. So these were the important cations that we have discussed, the positively charged ions: calcium ions, potassium ions, magnesium ions, hydrogen ions, all are positively charged cations. Similarly, there are some negatively charged ions, the anions, which also cause mild degree or slight vasodilatation. And citrate. So if there is increased concentration of either acetate or citrate or both, this will usually lead to increase in the diameter of the blood vessels, that is vasodilatation. Another important vasodilating agent is the carbon dioxide. So remember, carbon dioxide concentration, if increased, this will lead to vasodilatation in most part of the body, but this effect is predominant in the brain. So this is the humoral control of tissue blood flow. So when you get a question about role of circulation, you are supposed to mention all the hormones which act as vasoconstrictors, all the hormones which act as vasodilators, the role of sympathetic division and the role of parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system is very important. Plus, you should not forget the role of these cations and anions, which either cause vasodilatation or vasoconstriction. So this is all about the humoral control of circulation. So we have discussed both the local control and the humoral control of tissue blood flow. We will now move to the next topic, that is the neural mechanisms that regulate circulation. I mean the nervous control or the nervous regulation of the circulatory system. How does the nervous system regulate the circulatory system? And in one line, it will be easier for us to understand that the nervous system controls the circulation almost entirely, almost entirely through the autonomic nervous system. So again, the role of the autonomic nervous system is very important, very important. So almost entirely it is controlled by the autonomic nervous system. And when we use the term autonomic nervous system, we are referring to these two subdivisions of the nervous system, that is the sympathetic division and the parasympathetic division. So in almost all the parts of the body, sympathetic and parasympathetic are reciprocal to each other. If sympathetic is excitatory at one place, parasympathetic will be inhibitory at that place. So these are reciprocals of each other. Here you can see the anatomy of the sympathetic control. This is the vasomotor center. Here we will discuss the components of the vasomotor center later. What is vasomotor center, where it is located? Around the medulla and pons, the vasomotor center is situated. Now this vasomotor center is responsible for either vasoconstriction or vasodilatation, right? So first we will discuss the sympathetic nervous system. As we have discussed already, that there is a predominant role of sympathetic division of the ANS in the circulatory system, and usually there is vasoconstriction in response to sympathetic stimulation. And the sympathetic nerve system, it control it it includes both the thoracic, all the thoracic, and the first two lumbar vertebrae. So all these thoracic spinal nerves and the first two lumbar spinal nerves are part of the sympathetic nervous system. So signals from the vasomotor center, as soon as they leave, they immediately enter the sympathetic chain. Here you can see the sympathetic chain on each side. As soon as the fibers leave the vasomotor center, this is the vasomotor center in the midline. As soon as the nerve fibers leave the vasomotor center, they pass to the sympathetic chain. Now this sympathetic chain, the fibers from here can either go to the sympathetic nerves. Here these are the sympathetic nerves, and these sympathetic nerves will supply the important visceras of the body, especially the heart and other internal visceras. So sympathetic nerves will innervate the important visceras and the heart. Similarly, the other nerves, the other portion will move as spinal nerves, and these are the spinal nerves, and they will innervate the blood vessels. These are the spinal nerves. So sympathetic nerves innervating the heart, spinal nerves innervating the blood vessels or the vasculature of the peripheral areas. So vasomotor center is located near the medulla and pons in the center. As soon as the fibers leave this vasomotor center, the fibers pass by the sympathetic chain. From the sympathetic chain, the nerve fibers will enter the heart as sympathetic nerves or the blood vessels as spinal nerves. So the effect of sympathetic stimulation on cardiac activity is very important. If there is sympathetic nervous system, this will give an excitatory response. By excitatory response, we mean increased activity of heart. All the activities of heart will be increased. This not only includes the heart rate, but it also includes force of contraction of heart, that is contractility of heart. So if you stimulate the heart with sympathetic nerve, This will increase both the heart rate and the force of contraction of heart. Conversely, if you inhibit the sympathetic stimulation, if you inhibit the sympathetic nerves, this will give an opposite response, that is decreased heart rate and decreased force of contraction. A similar effect will be exhibited if you stimulate the heart by the opposite subdivision of the ANS, that is parasympathetic nerve. So parasympathetic stimulation will give the response opposite to that of sympathetic stimulation. So parasympathetic stimulation usually takes place via the vagus nerve, and stimulation by the vagus nerve will decrease both the parameters, the heart rate and the force of contraction. So to conclude, sympathetic stimulation increases the heart rate and contractility. Parasympathetic stimulation decreases the heart rate and contractility. And we can also say that sympathetic inhibition decreases the heart rate and contractility, and parasympathetic inhibition will slightly increase the heart rate and contractility. Now this is how the blood vessels are innervated by the sympathetic nerves. You can see the arteries. These are the large arteries with greater caliber here. These are the large size arteries which continue as the arterioles. The arterioles continue as capillaries. These are the exchange vessels. The capillaries continue as small venules first, and these small venules go on to make large sized veins. You can see how sympathetic nerves are innervating different portions of the circulatory system. So these sympathetic nerve fibers are supplying the arteries. These sympathetic nerve fibers are supplying the arterioles. These sympathetic nerve fibers are similarly supplying the venules and veins. The thing to remember is that there is almost negligible innervation by the sympathetic nerve fibers to the capillaries. You can see almost no innervation by the sympathetic nerve fibers to the capillaries. So sympathetic nerve fibers, they innervate almost all the blood vessels except the capillaries. So, so when they innervate the small arteries and the arterioles, and this will cause vasoconstriction. So stimulation of sympathetic nerve fiber will cause vasoconstriction. We have discussed already. Sympathetic stimulation on the blood vessels will decrease the diameter of the vessels. This is vasoconstriction. Not only small arteries and arterioles, but they also innervate the large vessels, the veins. And again, sympathetic stimulation will decrease the volume of the vessels. Now, this figure is taken from your textbook. Here you can see the location of the very important center known as the vasomotor center. This is the cut section. You are viewing the lateral view. This is the location of the vasomotor center. Here, this is the vasomotor center. This is pons. Just inferior to pons is medulla. So, so at the junction of pons and upper part of medulla, this is the site for vasomotor center. Now this vasomotor center has three important components. You must know the three components of this vasomotor center. The first component is the vasoconstrictor component or the vasoconstricting area. The second portion is the dilating area. And the third portion is the sensory area. So all these components of the vasoconstrictor area are located bilaterally. This means they are located on either side. The vasoconstrictor area, the vasodilator area, and the sensory area. The vasoconstrictor area is located in the medulla, in the upper portion of the medulla. Just below the vasoconstrictor area is the vasodilator area. Both are located bilaterally. One is located in the upper part of medulla, the other is located in the lower part of the medulla. And as the name indicates, vasoconstrictor area is responsible for constriction of the blood vessels. Vasodilator area is responsible for the vasodilatation of the blood vessels. Here you can see this is the signals. These are the signals from the vasoconstrictor area. This vasoconstrictor signals will decrease the caliber of the blood vessels and cause vasoconstriction. The other part is vasodilator area. This vasodilator area is located in the lower half of the medulla, and the signals from the vasodilator area are of inhibitory nature. Remember that. So signals from the vasodilator area are of inhibitory nature. So the signals from here will inhibit the second component, the vasoconstrictor area. So when the vasoconstrictor area is inhibited, there will be no vasoconstriction, and eventually there will be vasodilatation. So vasodilator area does not act directly but indirectly. How? By inhibiting the second part, the vasoconstrictor area. So I repeat, vasoconstrictor area sends positive or excitatory signals, and these excitatory signals cause vasoconstriction. On the other hand, the vasodilator area sends inhibitory signals to the vasoconstrictor area, and the vasoconstrictor area is inhibited. Once this area is inhibited, there will be no vasoconstriction, and this will be followed by vasodilatation. That is why we call it as vasodilator. So vasodilator area does not act directly, instead it inhibits the vasoconstrictor area and acts indirectly. The third component is the sensory area. Again, the sensory area is located bilaterally, and this is situated in the nucleus of Tractus solitarius. Now you have to remember the name, commonly denoted by capital N, capital T, and capital S. NTS, nucleus of Tractus solitarius. So this nucleus of Tractus solitarius is the sensory area which is located on either side of the junction of the medulla and the lower part of the pons inside the vasomotor center. Now this is important, the role of nucleus tractus solitarius in the arterial pressure regulation. So the inputs or the afferents, the inputs from here are the vagus nerve and the glossopharyngeal nerve. These are the sensory inputs, and the outputs will be sent to either the vasoconstrictor area or the vasodilator area. This means so the nucleus of Tractus solitarius NTS, the input will be by two things, which cranial nerve, vagus nerve, and glossopharyngeal nerve. These will supply the nucleus of Tractus solitarius N, T, and S. and this NTS is located at the junction of medulla and lower part of arm. So vagus nerve and glossopharyngeal nerve are the inputs, and the output will be either to the vasoconstrictor area or to the vasodilator area, and it all depends on the need, whether we required increase in the arterial pressure or decrease in the arterial pressure. And this is known as the baroreceptor reflex. This is known as the baroreceptor reflex. We will not go into the details of baroreceptor reflex today. We will discuss it later in the coming lectures. But you have to remember the role of nucleus tractus solitarius, which is located bilaterally on either side of the medulla and pons, and the inputs are the vagus nerve and the glossopharyngeal nerve, and the outputs are either to the vasodilating area or to the vasoconstrictor area, and it all the output depends on the need, whether we are required to increase the arterial pressure or decrease the arterial pressure. Now another concept is the role of vasomotor tone. Vasomotor tone, sometimes known as the sympathetic vasoconstrictor tone. Like the skeletal muscle or the smooth muscle, tonicity is there in the blood vessels as well. As we all know, by tonicity or muscle tone, we mean partial state of contraction even at resting state. For example, there is skeletal muscle tone even at rest. The skeletal muscles, they remain at rest, but they still exhibit some degree of contraction. Now this property is known as tone or tonicity. Similarly, the muscles of the blood vessels, the smooth muscles of the blood vessels, they also exhibit some degree of partial contraction even at the resting state, and this is known as the vasomotor tone. This is known as the vasomotor tone, the motor tone of the blood vessels, the partial state of contraction even without any stimulus. And the sympathetic division again is responsible for this tone, because even if there is no stimulation, there is some degree of excitation by the sympathetic nerve fibers. Here you can see, this is the graph in which you can see the arterial pressure on the ordinate or the y-axis and time duration on the x-axis. So under normal physiological circumstances, the vasomotor centers will give sympathetic signals to the blood vessels, and we call it as the vasomotor tone. And this vasomotor tone is responsible for maintenance of normal arterial pressure. So this is the normal arterial pressure at point 0 minutes. Now what we have done is we have anesthetized that area for some time. So after giving local, after giving anesthesia, spinal anesthesia, what happens? The tone is lost. The vasomotor tone is lost because we have given the anesthesia. There is no signal, no input from the sympathetic nerve. Hence, the sympathetic excitatory signals are gone. The vasomotor tone is gone. Hence, there is drop in the arterial pressure. And you can see the arterial pressure drops immediately to almost half of its original value. If it is around 100 millimeters mercury initially, after giving anesthesia, the pressure drops to almost 50 millimeters mercury. Now this drop in the arterial pressure is due to loss of vasomotor tone. Another Now, after few times we had injected norepinephrine. We have discussed the role of norepinephrine earlier. Norepinephrine is a vasoconstricting agent. So, so as soon as we have applied norepinephrine at time 10 minutes, around 10 minutes, we have injected norepinephrine into the blood vessels. So what happens? Due to constriction of the blood vessels, the arterial pressure immediately increases from 50 to even beyond 100 here, around 125 or even beyond that. Because this is the excitatory effect of the norepinephrine. Due to vasoconstriction, the pressure inside the vessels increases. So after a few minutes, when the effect of norepinephrine subsides, the pressure comes back to its resting level. Okay. So to conclude, blood vessels, they exhibit some degree of contraction, and this partial state of contraction even at rest is known as vasomotor tone, and this vasomotor tone is due to the excitatory signals sent by the sympathetic nerve fiber. So if you remove the excitatory signal by giving anesthesia, you are compromising the vasomotor tone. Once the vasomotor tone is gone, the arterial pressure will be reduced. And the opposite effect will be there if you inject it by norepinephrine. Now, how cardiac activity is controlled by the vasomotor center? The lateral portions of the vasomotor center, they transmit excitatory signals. Remember, by excitatory signals, we mean increase in the heart rate, increase in the force of contraction of the heart. However, the medial portions of the vasomotor center, they transmit the parasympathetic signals, and parasympathetic stimulation will decrease not only the heart rate but also the force of contraction. So different portions of vasomotor center send or transmit different types of signals. The lateral portion is responsible for excitatory signals, and medial portion is responsible for transmitting the parasympathetic inhibitory signals. So heart rate and force of contraction can either increase or decrease, right? Similarly, this vasomotor center is regulated by some of the higher centers. For example, the midbrain, the pons, and the diencephalon. They can either excite or inhibit vasomotor center depending on the need. Similarly, the posterior portion of the hypothalamus send excitatory signals. The anterior portion sends either excitatory or inhibitory signals. Similarly, the cerebral cortex, the higher center, can send either excitatory or inhibitory signal to the vasomotor center. This means the vasomotor center, which is located near the medulla, it may receive an excitatory signal or an inhibitory signal from the higher center. Similarly, the lateral portion of the vasomotor center will transmit the excitatory output, and the medial portion will transmit the inhibitory output. So the input can be excitatory or inhibitory, and the output can also be excitatory or inhibitory. And at the end, we will discuss the concept of vasovagal syncope. So what happens during emotional fainting? You must have heard there is fainting due to sudden stress or sudden emotional trauma. So what happens during sudden emotional trauma? The stimulation from the cerebral cortex is there. So Due to sudden emotional trauma, the cerebral cortex is stimulated, and the higher centers is responsible for sending or transmitting the signal downwards towards the hypothalamus, and then the signals enter the medulla. So during emotional stress, the sympathetic discharge is decreased and the parasympathetic discharge is increased. And both these events cause vasodilatation. We have already discussed sympathetic stimulation causes vasoconstriction and sympathetic inhibition causes vasodilation. So sympathetic inhibition and parasympathetic stimulation, both these events will lead to vasodilatation and decrease in the resistance. This will decrease in the arterial pressure. When the arterial pressure is compromised, the blood flow to the brain will be compromised and the person will faint. So these are the sequence of events that occur during vasovagal syncope. The signals from the medulla, they cause stimulation of the parasympathetic division and inhibition of the sympathetic division. Not only the arterial pressure drops due to vasodilatation, but there is bradycardia as well. We have discussed parasympathetic stimulation will decrease the heart rate and force of contraction. And decreased heart rate is known as bradycardia. When the heart rate is reduced, the cardiac output will be compromised. When the cardiac output is compromised, the arterial pressure will drop. So the eventual outcome in vasovagal syncope is decreased cerebral perfusion. Due to the drop in the arterial pressure, the blood flow to the brain will be compromised and the person will faint. So this is the concept of vasovagal syncope. So we have discussed the humoral control of circulation. We have discussed different vasoconstrictors. We have discussed the different vasodilators, and we have discussed the role of sympathetic and parasympathetic division on the circulation as well. Now, if we have any question, please let me know. Nadine, question answer session, please.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Yes, students, if you have any question, please let me know. It's better to mention your name before you ask a question. Thank you. Yes, students, if you have any question, any query regarding today's discussion, please let me know. No questions today?
सर फिगर 8.3 बता दें.
Please tell your good name and then ask the question. Your good name?
Sameem.
Which figure?
18.3.
Now this is the location of the vasomotor center here. You can see the vasomotor center. The vasomotor center is located at the junction of pons and medulla. Now, a vasomotor center has three components: vasodilator component, vasoconstrictor component, and the nucleus of tractus salutaris, that is the sensory component. The vasodilator component will cause vasodilatation. The vasoconstrictor component will cause vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction has a direct effect on blood vessels. Vasoconstrictor area will send stimulatory or excitatory signals, and the blood vessels will be constricted. On the other hand, the vasodilator area has an indirect effect. So this will inhibit the vasoconstrictor area. Vasodilator will send inhibitory signals to the vasoconstrictor area. Inhibition of vasoconstrictor area will cause vasodilatation. And the third area is the sensory area, that is nucleus of tractus solitarius, and the receiving inputs are the vagus nerve and the glossopharyngeal nerve. These are the inputs, and the outputs are either to the vasodilator area or to the vasoconstrictor area. And this reflex mechanism by which there is either vasoconstriction or vasodilatation to increase or decrease the arterial pressure. This reflex mechanism is known as baroreceptor reflex. Any other question? Yes, students, if you have any query, please let me know. We still have 3 to 4 minutes. If you have any question, kindly ask it. जी नदीम, आप सुन सकते हैं मुझे?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Students, if you have any question, we still have 2 minutes.
सर इससे पहले वाले चैप्टर में एक टॉपिक है वैस्कुलर रीमॉडलिंग, वो आपने नहीं करवाई तो वो नहीं करनी।
Vascular remodeling is under the long-term control mechanisms. If you remember, we discussed the acute mechanisms and the long-term mechanism. In acute mechanism, we discussed the vasodilator theory. Remember vasodilator theory? Then we discussed the oxygen demand theory, right? Oxygen demand theory. And we also discussed autoregulation, the myogenic response, and the metabolic theories, and all these are acute control. In long-term mechanisms, we discussed angiogenesis. or development of collateral circulation. We discussed the role of oxygen. We discussed the role of oxygen when the oxygen pressure is less at high altitude. There is angiogenesis. We discussed the role of other agents, VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, fibroblast growth factor, angiogenin. All these factors are responsible for development
क्या
of
हुआ
new blood vessels. And
क्या
development
हुआ
of new blood vessels around the previously existing vessels is known as collateral circulation or angiogenesis. And all these are under long-term control mechanisms. So vascular remodeling is long-term control. This is known as vascular remodeling. The increase in the diameter, the increase in the size of the capillaries, the increase in the number of capillaries, development of new capillaries around the previously existing capillaries. This is known as long-term control mechanisms. So we have discussed that. Vascular remodeling is the same thing. Any other question? All right, students, that's the end of today's session. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.